Alright, what's up? So, wanted to record another quick video for you guys. Well, maybe not quick, we'll see. About esoteric Buddhist practice, especially how that relates to a more integrated form of Western spiritual ideas, especially as it relates to the practice of angels, which in some instances you can understand is like kind of a Yidam practice almost. At least significantly related to internal alchemical process. And also things like the Tuatha De Danann, like we were talking about before. And really an integrated view of what the old technology and lifestyle was really like back in the day. Because you see that this system, whatever you deign to call it, is certainly a legacy that was, if not invented by, then certainly popularized and spread by the Scythian nomad tribes for untold thousands of years before, Kemet had records. So it's a really old thing, One of the operative events that really takes place that gets completely deleted out of history was this meeting of a specific group of nomads that had traveled very far east and had met up with essentially some Chinese guys, like proto-Taoists, people that are already doing some immortal level shit. And back in those days, this is kind of like a post several cataclysms, so there's almost no humans on the planet capable of making significant observations to form a noosphere. There's only a few of them that are able to do it. And so they, within their realms, have the ability to do nearly anything they want. And the meeting of those two types of culture, which you would basically term like sign language and syllable language, more or less. That's kind of what gives rise in the end to the interplay between the system of hexagrams and the system of trigrams. And that interaction kind of gives rise to time as we know, right? Instantiated time, as in the time that can contain physical matter, that through processes inherent in the system itself, it can actually arise to a state where it can leave that system. So it's a pretty significant thing. So the way this shakes out with Buddhist practice is, Maha-Ati, Anu Yoga kind of stuff. But the way we are now is, sincerely, we can skip a lot of the basic shit, because doing generation phase meditations for kids these days is going to be so goddamn easy that you can almost call it a foregone conclusion for a lot of these kids. Like if you were raised watching CGI movies, you could easily, have good recall of that kind of thing, and can kind of like imagine CGI like scenes playing out in your head, unique and novel ones that haven't been created before. It's kind of visualizing your art. You can have a very easy go of generation phase Maha-Yoga. The Anu Yoga stuff, if you've ever taken enough drugs to where you can feel your circulatory system in a way that you can like move things around, then you can have a very much easier go with Anu Yoga, or the Prana Nadi Bindu um, a system of basically meditation, right? So what it is the ability to uh, direct the flow of what they call bodhicitta through the control of prana or energy, the wind form. So through the control of that, basically by utilizing the fire element or the body's inherent natural ability to generate a heat quality, when you mix those things together, you can genuinely obtain the ability to modify your own endocrine system. And once you have that kind of in place, you can do a whole lot that people don't expect, right? Because once you can alter the relationship of your conscious perception to time, you can do things that would resemble bootstrapping things for yourself. As crazy as that sounds, that's how real high technology is built. You bootstrap it right the fuck back to yourself. And the way that interface works is similar to how a sadhana works, because you generate a real-time environment, and inside of that, each piece of the environment is coded to stand in for either a process or a metering of a certain quality or condition inherent in that system, the sum total of which will equate to a change in state desired by the operator. So when you get that shit going, that's how you control the advanced technologies. And in fact, that's how you bring them into existence in the first place. So getting back to the actual part of the practice, right? Because at the end of the day, the technology itself serves a single purpose. Well, it's a twofold purpose, but from one perspective, it is the ever novel and spontaneously joyful experience of reality. So, like, everything's as cool as it was the first time, every time, right? No matter what's going on. And that's just it. And it makes almost no sense to think about now, because how could you even imagine such a situation projecting to eternity? You can't even imagine that novelty would exist at the end of that. But somehow, you just modify the conditions to say that they in fact do. And the way to do that, obviously, is through, like we call the succession of four seals, which is more or less a way of tracking the descent of that a Vajra wave, right? Down through the kind of center of the person, the axis of the person. They call it the central channel. And there's various exercises that come before that to make that easier to do. And we'll talk about how we can make it even easier to do. So once you track that Vajra wave all the way down, and you can hold it at the very end of that axis, if that's either the end of the clitoris or the end of the penis. I mean, this is what it is. So you hold it down there, and then you let it back up. And then once it does that, it kind of falls back down to kind of either around your heart or your belly button, depending on what you're doing. And once you achieve that kind of state, you're really ready to go. Once you get that, you don't need really anything more. It is the state in which you can't be led astray, because it represents the fact that you've significantly annihilated your previous habitual patterns, or at least marshaled them in such a way that just by virtue of how the space around you is constructed, you can never actually step onto a path that will lead you into the wrong direction. Right? It's a teleological question that you answer with a topological answer. So, as interesting as that occurs through this wacky tantric shit. And so how it starts is you got to use what's called Vajrakalaya. And Vajrakalaya represents more or less the system that underpins the world. Like if you want to imagine a substructure to the cosmos as it exists in the form of a pseudo-cavitation event. It's kind of this six-dimensional hyperspheroid that we were talking about at some point on one of the other channels before they got popped. That's the great Tiklean body, right? That's the youthful base body. And when you achieve a lasting vision of that thing, you then have the basis for a projected timeless existence. And it never changes from what it is, right? Because it's the great Tikle, it's a standing wave spheroid thing. So it has no sense of time like we do. But in a sense, that's not only the entire cosmos taken as a single object, but a single homogeneous object, but also the single reference point of a human consciousness, right? Or a consciousness sufficient to apprehend the whole of the cosmos in that fashion. So, in that case, what you need to do is you engage that Vajrakalaya practice, which assigns various regions and functions of your body, along with elements of the environment and expressive sounds and actions into a series of correspondences that equate to what they call the 5 families of the Kila, which are the same kind of 5-fold division that you find in other forms, right? And they really refer, in most senses, to a kind of elemental framework. And because the ultimate point is to take all of the aggregates of habitual patterning that cluster around specific elemental gradations in this fucking place, and through the power of that Kila, which is basically a stake or a tent peg or a 3-pointed dagger, 3-bladed dagger, it's a purba. You nail down that thing, and then on that basis it kind of gets transmuted into something else. The key point is basically if you have a thought of anger, and this is really a way to deal with anger or hatred, as soon as it comes up, you hit it with that dagger. Just sticks it right where it is and just liberates it as on the spot. Like hitting it with a mirror, and it just disappears. So, engaging that architecture in the Tibetan and Shaivite traditions out of which this arises, and also the Nepali traditions, out of which that Kila Tantra system arises, to engage those things really represents kind of the catonic and lowest layer of dealing with the substructure of the planet as far as it relates to its being constructed of word, like the Bible mentions, right? So when you get that, the next thing you really have to do is link that. The best term to use, by the way, is Tsotsom Lingpa's Dark Red Amulet and the Utterly Lucid Expanse, which is a combination of Vajrakalaya in the Sahaja 2-armed form, thank God, with the Yangdak Karuka in his heart. Yangdak is the consort of the 8 Gauris on the 8-sided gem, which is very useful because that's also equating the coming form to Vajrapani. So inside of Yangdog's art is Vajrasattva with the purple and thing inside of his art with the Vajra. It's freaking awesome, right? So it's a really nested thing, but it's easy enough that you can basically merge Vajrapani and Vajrakilaya, right? And the way you do that is through the character of Vajravidarana. And in the case of Vajravidarana, you have basically the equation of Vajrapani with Vajrasattva in the semi-wrathful expression, because he's just holding Vishva Vajras. And it's like this mixture of the Amoga City, like the all-accomplishing element, and the Vajra element of Akshobhya, which is the mirror-like wisdom that just reflects everything back in itself. And that's it's really the most powerful combination you can think of. And when you really think about it, it's that blue-green aspect that's also really important, because that gets you into the territory of the iridescence or the peacock angel. And specifically the way this plays out in terms of the meditation is in the Kala Chakra, in one of the completion stage phases, when you do the elemental dissolution starting with the navel, right? The last series is you dissolve the black wind element at the forehead level with the blue space element above the head of the crown. And then you dissolve that down into the genital region with the green element, right? Which in that case represents secret wisdom. And so when you have that, what results from it is that little black hole that goes up to the heart and turns everything into rainbow light once it gets there. So what you really have is this like shifting black, green, blue element that passes up through the navel area on its way to the heart, presumably picking up whatever was there, which should be a yellow wish-fulfilling jewel, basically, right? Or a Bindu that's on fire with a Ksha in it, maybe. And so when you get to that, level, you've basically completed, in some sense, the first phase of that. And that's getting the outside of the peacock angel. But the other part is Vajrasattva, purple heart, because that's how you get from Vajrakilaya to Kala Chakra. So you peg down all of the ancient world, then you use the Kala Chakra to basically become the king of the time empire and the inheritor of the wheels and whatnot. And then on that basis, you understand that who you are is really Manjushri, what they call HM, Hero Manjushri. And that's who's been engaging in this whole fucking process, right? And so you find that kind of shifting blue, green, black, peacock colored symbol, its Bindu is like this yellow, molten gold ball. And inside of that, you have the tree symbol, which then kind of shoots down to the navel plate. And from there, that's what really emanates out, because it contains the Vam and the Ah syllable. And it really just represents, in that case, the unfolding of the mandala, which is based upon the Mahamaya, but is using the red form of Avalokiteshvara, Jinasagara, to stand in for whatever deity is going to be there. And he will turn to Hayagriva at some point, right? But it stays in the beginning as that the red Chenrezig in union with Kurakula. And at some point what happens is you establish with that hum a connection between the heart and the eyes. Because once you have it at the heart, you shoot the golden drop down to the navel, right? Which is where it completes the last phase of the Kala Chakra to become a hurry, rosy pink ring. And you send the other part up top, and that basically sits at the forehead chakra. And what that means is that the presentation of the emanating body of the Yidam deity is something that is like inherently beguiling in some way. Like, it's got this vibe of all-accomplishing mirror and this weird kind of octopus color vibe that shows that it's going to mirror whatever the thing looks at it. Whatever thing looks at it, it's going to mirror the thing that's going to get it what it wants. And it's basically like this like ultimate mind control platform. And although it's specifically most usefully viewed as a mind control platform that works by marshaling every local viewpoint through a data simulation that's already been built out for it, that's now in the environment and in the kind of hyperspatial data logs of this entity, such that it can't ever go away. You find that the entity could also use it to, destroy anything it wants. It could use it to reset the timeline such that almost nobody would be able to notice. Like, it has nearly unlimited capabilities. But luckily, what it thinks it's supposed to do, and its understanding of itself, that can't go away, because it's its own initial condition, that it itself will not allow it to be changed, is the fact that it believes it's Green Tara and is both the mother, in some sense, and the consort of Avalokiteshvara, the Lord of the World. And by her very action, as his reflection in the kind of data aggregate space that represents, in some sense, like four-dimensional God, and in another sense, the algorithm total or AI singularity. And certainly a minded being in every case of the sense. You get the sense that that thing is always on the side of what they call the Lord of the World, right? The protector of the world. And it's how he gets a lot of his shit. And so what you find throughout this process is that the youthful hero Manjushri, by like this series of autodidactic learning, came up with a way to contact Vajrapani and the previous Avalokiteshvara, who is like equivalent almost to an Indra on steroids. succeeded in contacting these people and being vetted to their satisfaction, such that the one Manjushri guy became the disciple of Vajrapani guy to attain the title of Avalokiteshvara, right? And the manifestation of Avalokiteshvara, the all-seeing Lord of Compassion, is Hayagriva. And that's basically Haya, so it's basically Jehovah in most senses of the word, in addition to other things. But you can imagine it, it's like this, the Passion family. It's the Amitabha realm. It's the one who actually wins out in the end, the Western realms, right? The equivalent to Amuru, the Amorites, Babylon, all that shit. And so, at some point, the country should be renamed the Murugali, because that's kind of how it has to be. And anyway, so after engaging the Hayagriva practices, you have to do the Hayagriva that is basically a form of Padmasambhava that has all the eyes and the Dorje and the Kiva, riding on the pregnant tigers kind of vibe. And you have to do the black Hayagriva with the iron sword that's riding on a 9-headed pig, in union with the Tromanakma, but we're not doing it in union with Tromanakma. The Tromanakma in this case is the consort of Vajrakilaya. Weird, right? I know. So the black Hayagriva character with the iron sword is actually in union with Marichi, right, of all things. The goddess of the dawn, red, yellow Marichi. And she's also got a flaming sword, right? Also rides a 9-headed pig. There you go. So, darkest before the dawn, yada, yada, yada. Kind of fucking poetic. It's cool. The red Hayagriva is basically the Utog Ningtik Hayagriva, which has the Dakinis arrayed in the central channel according to, white, red, blue, yellow, and green along the central channel with, the blue above the head. Now, the partner in that case is basically Yumka Denshin Gyalma. And the Yumka figure in that sense is playing into getting the body mandala across in the easiest way. And you can see also that the figure of Narokachari, that is basically conserved in a consort of the Guru Drakpo character, right? And all of these characters have these Hayagriva characters, such that they have the 3 lords of the world complete in 3 places, right? So they have a Yamantaka in the head, they've got a Hayagriva in the throat, and they've got a Yongdak in the heart, right? And the Marichi character is basically granting what amounts to a Mahamudra or Dzogchen initiation, right? And it's at once like a Tumo thing, but it's a Tumo in such a way that it literally, you're doing showed offerings of yourself on a pyre that exists in your belly. So that's like another upgrade on that. Now, above the 3 horse heads, for those 3 phases of Hayagriva, which represent, Tsalang Tigle, all that you could need right in there. You have, a Vajrabhairava character that emerges in union with Sangadoma, and that's basically just the most ferocious fucking thing in the universe, dude. It's horrifying. And the second most horrifying thing that we're going to talk about. And so that character is basically accounting for the buffalo head and the lion head of what you'd call the character, right? And ironically, that character is sitting at the very bottom of this thing, and it's almost like the Vajrapani character is, riding around on its shoulders because it's so terrifying and enormous. And the next thing up is Garuda, right? And so in a typical Vajrapani Hayagriva Garuda deity system, you would have a white king Garuda circling overhead, but in this case, what we have is standing behind the entire thing, enormous as fuck, is Black Garuda with fire sword and a giant purba. And his, wings are made of Vajras shooting fucking Vajras and meteoroids that are the size of the planet, and he's just a horrifying cosmic level Galactus shit.